This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
You can see here earlier today, 9 seniors on the Bison football team graduated and earned their degree. Big congratulations to all of them for such an outstanding achievement. Great to see the guys there in a moment here. You're going to see them with Coach Kleiman standing up on stage. Coach is like, gentlemen, great job. Now, let's go play some football.
Let's play football. We got this out of the way.
Good evening and welcome to the semifinal edition of the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I'm Chris Berg along with the one and only Alex Egan. Tonight, have an outstanding Proceed Player Roundtable discussion for you. Several former players are going to be breaking down tonight's unprecedented opportunity, I will say, for the 5th straight year for the Bison to go to Fargo South, a.k.a. Frisco. It's unbelievable to even be saying that.
I know.
When you think about the beginning of the season. But I think the other big thing tonight, Alex, you look at when the bracket first came out, nobody thought we were going to be here at home in the Fargo Dome. And I think before you get started, just how important this 12th man Bison Nation is for this team.
We'll talk about how important they're going to be, but yeah, it is a bonus home game because the Bison got the 3 seed and Illinois State had the 2 seed. And we didn't think that in the semifinals, if chalk held, it was going to be an away game at Normal, Illinois today. So it's definitely a bonus game, and I know the players are looking forward to one last time at the Fargo Dome, especially the 14 seniors that are on the roster. We're going to start by taking a look at the Bison schedule here as we pull it up. The 2 big wins in the playoffs, both in pretty dominating fashion. And for the first time this year since the North Dakota game, the Bison are playing a team this coaching staff and these players haven't seen in their time at NDSU. It's a new opponent, and it is Richmond. They come in from the Colonial Athletic Conference on the East Coast, and this team is no stranger to success. They are the 7 seed in the playoffs, but they probably should have been seeded higher. They had a big win over James Madison and William & Mary in the regular season, and then again over William & Mary in the FCS second round. And of course, last week's big upset of Illinois State in Normal, Illinois. We're going to tell you what makes the Spiders so dangerous a little bit later on in the show. Let's take a look at the bracket now. Just 4 teams remaining, Chris, and I don't know how it happened. The Bison are there again. Our game tonight on ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. And then the other semifinal will be on ESPNU tomorrow as we take a look at the other half of the bracket between Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State. Maybe. There it is. There are those Bearcats again. Those pesky Bearcats somehow. They have found their way into a semifinal. They've been rolling, winning their last 5, including an upset of McNeese State and handily beating Colgate in the quarters. Like I said, we're going to get into the Spiders in today's matchup in just a bit. But first, we're going to get you out to the Dome with Mike Morkin and our Northland Ford Dealers Tailgate Report.
Okay, obviously these segments are taped, and we're here as some of the folks are still getting set up for tailgating. How you doing? Putting up the Bison flag, huh? Yep. Hey, weather conditions, how are they for you?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
We're tough. We live in North Dakota.
Cheeks are a little red there.
Hey, man, we've had great weather all tailgating this year. I cannot believe it.
Yep.
Yep.
Feeling on the game?
Tough, but I think we'll win by 10 maybe.
Win by 10?
The Bison are always hot. We're warm.
The Bison are always hot.
How'd you beat them in a dome?
Hard to beat them in the dome. All right, you guys going to get the flag up here? All right, I think last weekend when we were here, you put it up upside down, did you? Or backwards, wasn't it?
That was an omen.
That was an omen. Okay. Well, good luck to you. We're going to get this up here.
Thank you.
Okay, give it a crank. Putting the flag up, putting the Bison flag up as the fans are gathering for tonight's game against Richmond. Let's send it back to the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. When we come back, we're going to introduce you to the Spiders, and we're going to take a look at the numbers for the teams today. Plus, we still have our Proceed Player Roundtable. You do not want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Let's take a look now at the numbers for both squads, and the numbers, they do tell a story. We begin with the Bison, who are just imposing their will on other teams. The Bison dominating in these statistical categories, and they still lead the nation in time of possession, which was a big key for the Bison last game, keeping 2 games ago, keeping Montana's high-powered offense off the field. It may not be as big of a factor today against Richmond, but it's certainly a stat that.
I mean, Richmond can put up some points. They like to throw the football. You got to keep a high-powered offense off the field, and I think it's going to be important in that facet of the game today.
Yeah, and the defense doing a good job for the Bison, holding other teams to under 20 points a game. And, you know, don't forget the Bison, they've done well this year in the playoffs. They held Northern Iowa to 200 yards total, just over 200 yards total. They held Montana to 6 rushing yards in the playoffs.
But let's bring up the numbers here for the Spiders as well, because one of the key things that we want to talk about, it's not going to necessarily show in this graphic, but last week you're talking about the nation's leading rusher in conference from Illinois State. They held this guy to, 30, 35 yards in an entire football game. Both him and Robertson to, I think, 60 yards combined. That is a stunning number when you and I both know how talented those two players are.
Yeah, Robertson only got 36 yards total, and Coppridge, again, as you said, 30 yards.
Yeah.
It's a really good
Those
defense.
Are two studs.
Coach Kleiman said, or actually Danny Rocco for the Spiders called his defense unique because they do some different things. And Coach Kleiman said it does kind of pose a challenge for his offense to get a good look at what the Spiders do, because they do line up in so many different fronts, and they're showing different things pre-snap versus what happens after the snap. So it's going to be an interesting game, and let's introduce you. Oh.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, they're really just kind of plugging up the gaps, letting the linebackers do the work, and so it's going to be fascinating to see how our offensive line, and even Haig said this week, look, these guys got some beef on them. We're not going to just move them around, at will, so it's going to be great to see how the Rams show up. Let's take a look. I believe you said meet the Spiders.
We are going to meet the Spiders, and let's take a look. These are their offensive guys, and if we could pull up the graphic, it's really kind of a four-headed monster, if you will. We don't have the room for the fourth guy here, but Jacoby Green is the stud running back. Look at those numbers. Those are gaudy. 1,500 yards rushing, 340 receiving yards, 21 rushing touchdowns all by himself. I mean, the kid is a scoring machine, so the Bison are going to be keying in on him. And Kyle Laletta, their quarterback, he is the guy that really, as he goes, so does this offense. Over 3,000, almost 3,500 passing yards. He's got 18 passing touchdowns.
And this one I'm excited to see today is, can the Bison defense actually stop a team that's got a couple of different facets to them? I mean, last week we saw what they did against Bailey and UNI, but again, that was predominantly a rushing offense. Here you've got obviously a stud running back, 1,500 plus yards. Then you look at Laletta and this Brian Brown, just to put him in context, over 1,300 yards receiving. To give you some context in there, the top wide receiver for the NDSU Bison football team, RJ, has 607. This guy's got twice as many receiving yards as RJ.
And what we don't show you there is another guy that Laletta likes to throw to. Reggie Diggs has 901 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns this year. Let's take a look at some of the defensive guys that are going to be causing the Bison offense some problems. Omar Howard, he's a guy that makes tackle. He's a linebacker. He's going to be involved in the play as a linebacker. David Jones, I want to bring your attention to the interceptions line. David Jones has 9 interceptions by himself this year. To put that in perspective, the Bison as a team have 12. So 9 interceptions for David Jones. He's a safety. He's a ball hawk. Coach Kleiman called these guys ball hawks. They fly around. And Andrew Clyde.
They have 21 picks this year.
Yeah, they're doing all right when it comes to takeaways. Andrew Clyde is a redshirt sophomore on the D line, and he's got 6 sacks this year. We're going to tell you. So you're going to be seeing these guys. But now let's get you to our Bobcat heavy lifting report. And we could pick a player. We've picked a player all year, a collection of players. But today, we've decided the biggest difference in today's game will be Bison Nation. Richmond has been preparing for the Dome, practicing in their basketball arena with the speakers blasting. But for a first-time opponent coming into the Dome, the crowd will be the biggest factor. It's already proven to get Montana and Northern Iowa out of rhythm. And Bison Nation will need to be an impact player today. They are our Bobcat heavy lifting report.
We've got to wrap this up, but all I can say, Alex, is #BeHeard, H-E-R-D.
You're so hip, Chris Berg. All right, when we come back, our Proceed Player Roundtable, 4 former Bison players breaking down this game with our experts. Do not go away.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Earlier this week, Beth Houle sat down with some former Bison players to get their take on this big semifinal matchup. Beth?
Thanks, guys. Welcome out out to Herdin' Horns, another outstanding group here as we prepare for the semifinals between NDSU and Richmond. I'm joined by an outstanding crew once again. Todd Bates joining us this week, Christian Dudzik, Levon Perry, Carlton Littlejohn, and then of course Brian Shawn at the other end joining us for this one. The fact of this one is it's an unexpected home game. The Bison, when the bracket came out, they were expecting to have to go on the road in the semifinals and take a road game for the first time in the playoffs in a really long time. The fact is, though, Richmond upset second-seeded Illinois State, and now the Bison are at home once again. What's it like to have this game at home? How important is that for this game to be at home?
Well, I think the crowd plays into it so much. I think I already saw an article about Richmond and how they're preparing by going into the basketball facility and pumping music. But, when it really comes down to it and the flow of the game starts going and you have to start making adjustments, it's really tough to do that with the crowd noise.
That's true. That is true because, was it my senior year? The crowd got me my first touchdown. so yeah, playing in the Fargo Dome is a completely different environment. We even tried practicing, and we'll crank the crowd noise, but it's not the same as game day, third and 1, if you want to call it. And they start yelling. It's a whole different game.
I mean, a big point is if you watched that game last week against Northern Iowa, the crowd got even more angry and loud when that whole whistle debacle kind of happened. I mean, this crowd knows what it takes. This crowd is well aware. They're super informed. And I mean, you look at the history of the last 4 years in the the last 3 years in the Fargo Dome in the semifinals, taking on these teams. I mean, especially the last two, they've been lights out games. I mean, they just destroyed Sam Houston last year. You guys destroyed Sam Houston last year, as well as then Coastal Carolina before that. I mean, what's it like to now prepare for what is your final football game in the Fargo Dome? What's this senior class going through this week, Carlton?
I mean, I guess they're going to try to stay loose. I'm sure the coaches are all telling them that this is just another game for them. So as a senior,
is it just another game though? Can you do that? I mean, you've got finals, you've got guys preparing to walk across the stage, and I mean, we all talk about senior week. We know how cool senior week is. That's the moment where you get to do your speeches. I know that's a huge part for all of you guys, but now this is your last game for sure, officially, and you have the chance to send yourself to Frisco too. Is this any other week?
I mean, when you put it like that, no. But as a player, you got to think of it in your head as just another game. You're going to prepare the same like you did the week before then. So at the end of the day, it's just another game, but to the fans or to the country, it's always different.
I think NDSU has played better with more pressure. Like you said, you got graduation and finals, but I think they've showed over the last few years in the semifinals, they just come out and play really well.
Yeah, I know some of them boys after finals are done, and you are graduating, you are done, all you have to do is worry about football. So after you graduate and you have that game, you're not thinking about anything else but that game. Yeah. And sometimes it is, you get nervous, but other times, you get really excited because, you're playing with the boys you've been with for, 5-6 years, and then you get to go out there and not worry about anything else but hitting somebody on the field.
And that's Perry with the trump card.
That's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
Like I say, essentially you're a professional football player after finals. What do you have to worry about? Football, and football. So.
And what you're going to eat that night, but they feed you anyway. Well, that's sure.
You have to go back to, the last time a road team that won a national championship that's had to go on the road, you have to go back to 2007. And guess who it was? It was Richmond. It's kind of ironic how that works out. So that just shows how important not having to go on the road is. Because a team that has always won the national championship over the last 7-8 years have not had to go on the road, and that's a critical piece of the puzzle. And this is going to be now a second short week for Richmond. They got finals too. They're flying in on Wednesday, not even Thursday, Wednesday night. So they've been home for like 4 days. Now they got to prepare, come through. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage this week. As much as difficult it is for NDSU, you got to remember they got a travel day plus an extra day here. So that's even tougher, I think, on them.
Not to mention they're practicing in a basketball arena because they're just trying to get some of that echoing in. I don't know. Todd, do you have any thoughts just on it being back in the Fargo Dome this week and how huge this is? We saw Richmond go on the road last week, but they didn't really have an atmosphere. I think even the recorded total attendance was 5,000, which everybody lies on those. So.
Well, I was trying to remember when my last final was, and it was a long time ago, so about 30 years ago. We practiced back in the 80s. We had to practice in the Bison Sports Arena, but I can tell you, they're not going to be able to replicate the noise in a basketball arena. So our fans, if they crank it up, it should be a good home field advantage for us.
Well, coming up, I certainly want to break down a little bit about Richmond. They threaten in a lot of areas. They took down one of the best teams in the Valley, absolutely. Not the best, but one of the best teams in the Valley last week. And then, of course, we've got plenty to talk about with Bison football this week. Coming up, though, with plenty more from Herds and Horns. Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. We're going to be hearing from the roundtable, as you said, throughout the rest of the show. We're going to step aside and get you back out to Herd and Horns for more of that right after this.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the show. Earlier in the week, Beth Hool sat down with several former Bison players at Herd and Horns for our Proceed Player Roundtable to get their thoughts on Richmond. Beth?
Hey guys, thanks so much. Back out here for our Proceed Player Roundtable at Herd and Horns. Dr. Debates, I know that since I got your name wrong last time, really sorry about that. Dr. Debates here. I know you watched this Richmond-Illinois State game. I have to know just kind of what you saw in them. How were they able to take down a team and hold some of the nation's best FCS rushers to such low numbers in this game?
Well, it looked like the receivers were fairly physical. So I'm sure our corners are going to be prepared for that. They played good defensively, and they came out ready to play. And I'm not so sure just watching the game that Illinois State was ready to play, but I know the Bison will be ready. So.
Brian, I know you were able to catch some of that game. I mean, was that the factor? Was it just Illinois State maybe was preparing for the Bison already?
I don't know if that was it, but Illinois State was certainly flat. They didn't tackle well. They just did not show a lot of emotion. I do think the atmosphere had something to do with that. Richmond, at the line of scrimmage, they could make adjustments and call audibles. There was no issue with that. I mean, you could hear everything going on the telecast. You couldn't hear the crowd at all. And I just think they just said, we're going to do everything we can to stop the run. They put 9 guys within 5 feet of the line of scrimmage, very similar to what Montana did against NDSU, actually. And so we're going to make you beat us through the air. And Trey Roberson did throw for 370. He's not a great throwing quarterback. So I think that's one of those things where they made that adjustment and said, here's what we're going to try to do. And offensively, they just dominated that game against Illinois State, just gashed them over and over and over again. And that's what surprised me most is how unphysical Illinois State was in that game, because they have a pretty physical D-line. They got pushed around the entire game.
I mean, you guys played against some of these guys. I mean, LJ, what's it like to see somebody be able to, or to hear even, that somebody was able to shut down Marshawn Coprich and Trey Roberson and to prevent them from getting the rushing yards, because they challenged you guys certainly in that national championship game last year.
I mean, it's always scary to hear about a team dominating someone as good as Illinois State, but at the same time, we're a different team than Illinois State. I see them as more of a spread offense. I see the Bison more of a, at this point, we're multiple offense now, because we can get the fullback in the game, we can take them out and then pass the ball. So at the same time, the film will tell what happened in that game. So it'll be a totally different game when they play us.
I think the other thing is, and I think my teammates would agree with me, is that it's going to come down to execution for NDSU. It doesn't really matter who they play. We know that Richmond's a great team. Illinois State is a great team. But coming down to execution, that's an attitude that NDSU has, and that's what winning teams have. And that's what we've had in the past, and I think that they're going to have that this game.
I mean, does it help any, though, knowing that being able to look at film where Richmond played Illinois State, a team that they are familiar with, not maybe the team that NDSU is most familiar with in the Valley, but a team in a style of football that you're familiar with, does that help any in preparation with a game like this? Because they have no other overlap in games except for Illinois State.
Yeah, it'll help because you know the kind of athletes you're playing against. Illinois State has a great group of athletes who compare their athletes to ours, and you can kind of get a comparison there.
I mean, okay, so Richmond has like 21 interceptions on the season or something like that. We've got a defensive lineup here. So, I mean, what's that mean about a team? What's that say about a team? Does it say more about their league and who they're playing? Or, I mean, because that's a huge number in my eyes.
I think it's hard to say. You know, the East Coast is a little more spread offense, and, you know, I think they probably had, besides, you know, when Marcus Williams was playing, they probably had the interceptions leader every year, because just the way that the offense is run out there, you know, it's basketball on grass, like they say. But, you know, having said that, Coastal Carolina came in here last year and played really well against us, and we couldn't stop anything. So, you know, you don't really know what to expect sometimes.
The stats don't tell the whole story, huh?
Well, I think they don't, and I think, again, these guys know better. They've just been doing this a couple of years ago, but I'm sure the Bison are going to look at game film from other teams and find maybe some areas to attack, but they'll be prepared. I'm sure a lot of game film, although they've only have one common opponent, I still think they'll do their studying and they'll know what they're getting into.
I think something I've been really impressed with this year has been this Bison coaching staff. I think you look at your guys' most recent groups and the talent that you guys have had, the experience that you guys have had has really been a huge support for the Bison as a whole. This year, they've had to coach a lot of young guys up, and the young guys are having huge games now and huge performances now. I think being able to see what this coaching staff has been able to do, especially in these rematch games, to watch them go against Montana again, that seemed personal, and they executed. And you know, and to see them come out against Northern Iowa and have such a clear-cut game plan against stopping Bailey. You know, it's very evident that this group is able to dial things up and to have a plan of attack. And it's great to see how some of these young guys are able to step up. I mean, you played as a young guy, that's for sure. I mean, what's it like to see some of these guys out there?
You know, it's just such a difference between game one and then the semifinal game and the playoff. You know, especially the young guys, they develop more and more over the season. It's exponential. And, you know, in that first year, especially, you know, for Robbie Grimsley, he's in his first total year. I was in my second. You just realize what the program's about. You buy in a little bit more. You start trusting the coaches. You understand the defense a little bit more. And when everybody can do that and develop as a team, you're going to have success.
I agree. Start out that first one, you get all nervous. Was it Kansas was my first game? I got a little nervous. I got hit. I got hit and knocked down and thought it was over, and then I got mad and caught the guy slipping around the pile and hit him over, and it was a wrap since then. And you get those nerves out and you start shaking, and you realize that it's football at the end of the day. And you play football. It don't matter who you line up against.
Ever imagine Levon Perry nervous in a football game?
That's one.
Breaking news, folks. Levon Perry was once nervous in a football game. How about that? The Proceed Player Roundtable, bringing it to you. Well, guys, we've got plenty more to talk about. Have to talk about the Bison a little bit more and just where they are now as a team. We've got that coming up here with our Proceed Player Roundtable from Herman Moore.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. When we come back, we're going to tell you who's playing today and who the Bison will be without on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go out to Beth, standing by with our Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine Injury Report. Beth?
Thanks, guys. Here for our Sanford Orthopedic Sports Medicine Injury Report, joined by Dr. Noonan. And we've been talking about a lot of times you start to hear the same injuries kind of come up, and especially at different levels, that college level and that NFL level. One of those is hip impingements. How does something like that kind of happen, and what is it?
Sure, it is a common injury, especially in collision athletes and football athletes. And really, hip impingement or femoral acetabular impingement, which is the fancy word for it, is an abnormal collision between the ball and the socket in the hip joint. And it's usually caused by extra bone on one or both sides. And with repetitive impingement between the two, you can end up tearing a ring of cartilage, which is called the labrum in the hip joint.
So what can you do for something like that? Is that something that requires surgery, or can you deal with it in other ways?
So we always try to deal with it without surgery, especially modifying some of the training regimens. Usually with deep squatting, flexion, rotation can make it much worse. If you can't get it better through all that, then sometimes you are left with no other options than surgery. Surgery involves reshaping the femur and the socket and fixing the labrum, but it can be a very long recovery, up to 4 months or longer, to get back to sports such as football.
Well, thanks so much for all the information this week, guys. That's another Sports Medicine Injury Report.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. Let's look at the injury report today. The Bison come out relatively healthy from the Northern Iowa game. No major injuries to report. Coach Kleiman said this week, with it being shorter and finals week, they would have to work to get the players' bodies back. So there could be a little soreness as the players' bodies haven't had their full opportunity to heal and rest. But it's a semifinal, so I imagine there'll be a lot of willpower being employed today. Carson Wentz still practicing. Likely won't be available today. That might change. King Frazier still dealing with an injury he sustained against Montana, but he was available last week and should be good to go today, as well as Chase Morlock. All right, let's get you back out to the Dome. Mike is back in the tailgate lot, and he has our Northland Ford Dealers tailgate report. Mike?
All right, so it's cold outside, but how's the best way to beat the heat? It's to stay inside where it's nice and warm. In fact, we've got some Bison fans here that are doing just that. Yeah. Bob Sutton is the head honcho of this group. Tell me about your friends.
Hey, it's the Fargo Beer Club, founded in '06. Bought the bus in '08. Here we are, 20 by 20, brand new canopy. Bus is running just like a little kitten this morning. Good heat. I think it's got to be about 85 in here.
Yeah, cold. What cold?
We're so good. We got cooking tents set up. So if you need a hot ham and cheese, courtesy of Rosie's Restaurant, brand new downtown, hit that one. But we're going to have some grilled Wishick sausage, world famous. So you really want for nothing when you come in this girl.
Nice. And everybody wants to ride back down to Frisco, right?
Yeah, I tell you what, it's already planned. This is not a rookie run for this bus. We've been down there already. So it's a great running rig. Lots of fun, good group. There's about 50 of us. Just can't stress, all good Bison fans, and today we're expert Bison fans.
All right, thank you so much. Which team's going to Frisco, Texas?
All right, thank you very much, Mike. When we come back, we're going to hear more from our Proceed Player Roundtable. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
And welcome back to the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I am Alex Egan.
And I'm Chris Berg. We're going to be walking you right up to kickoff. The game tonight is on ESPN Deuce. And stay with us up to kickoff, because right now we've got more from our Proceed Player Roundtable at Herd and Horns with Beth Hool. Beth?
Hey guys, welcome back out to Herd and Horns, our Player Proceed Roundtable, heating up here with plenty of good food courtesy of the Herd and Horns. Guys, the Bison team has been outstanding since Easton Stick has come into this game, and I think a big part everybody can agree on is the team as a whole really stepped up around him, which was great to see, encouraging to see. And last week, Coach Kleiman said that we saw Easton Stick learn how to manage a game a little bit more against Northern Iowa. What are you guys seeing from him? I mean, he's a young guy, he's stepping up. I think expectations were high because we heard so much about him, but at the same time, you think you're playing a redshirt freshman as well. What have you seen from him, especially now versus his first game with Indiana State?
Well, he seems like, he said he's pretty calm and cool, and he doesn't get too excited about things, which is great for your quarterback. As a freshman, redshirt freshman, that's pretty impressive. But I think he managed the game very well. He didn't make any mistakes, no turnovers. 11 for 16, so he did quite well. So it's nice to have a guy like that in our team.
And then not to mention that run game was something that people were really kind of, there were grumblings. People were a little upset. We'd gotten away from that Bison run game a little bit, and now it's emerging. King Frazier is about to push that 1,000-yard mark as well. I mean, I know I'm talking to a group of defensive guys here, but I told Brian Shawn that, if anyone can talk both sides of the ball, it's the defensive side guys that can talk about an offense. What have you guys seen just from this group and the improvement that they've been able to make?
Well, I would just say, when Carson was a good runner. Easton's a little quicker, a little faster. When you have the quarterback run aspect to your offense, it ends up being 11 on 11. So if anybody slips, in their gap, it could be off to the races. So Easton really adds that element, and talked to him a little bit. He's from Omaha, so I'm close with his family, and I told him, you know, your name will be called soon enough, and sure enough it was, and he's just been waiting for it. He's been preparing for it since he came and stepped on campus.
I don't know much about him. I can't really say much about him. It's impressive though. Like, good for him. Just saying, you know, your star quarterback gets hurt and all of a sudden you got to step up. Good for him. I can't say anything bad about him. He's really stepped up and he's really handled business.
Well, then I can throw the defense at you guys at least a little bit. There were 3 seniors on this defense. 3 when this season started. I think some guys have matured quite a bit, certainly. I mean, what can you guys just kind of say about how much they've grown as a group? They've got young guys stepping up. I know, Christian, you already mentioned Robbie Grimsley and the role that he's playing, but I mean, even Nick DeLuca and the role that he's grown into. I mean, he had like 12 tackles in the first half last week alone. I mean, he's just really dominating out there. How much has this defense impressed you, and how they've been able to adjust as the season's gone on?
They've done a lot, like especially when you're looking at the beginning of the year. We had our doubts saying maybe they'll give a few more points, but now the season is ending and they're looking like the old Bison defense. So, I mean, kudos to them for what they've done.
Yeah, and you know, when you go back to the way everything is intertwined, I mean, look how far G. Tucker's come along from where he was. Look how far MJ's come along from where he was. And those guys are playing at a high level. Trey Dempsey was just a nickel guy last year, and he's turning a spectacular safety. He's making great plays. NDSU leads the country in pass breakups. People don't talk a lot about that. CJ Smith is 6th in the history of FCS football in pass breakups. I mean, these guys are doing a fantastic job against some really dynamic offenses, and that's something to be said. But I think the caveat to that, going back to Easton Stick, is the Bison have not put the defense in bad positions. Sometimes taking a sack is not a bad thing, and punting the football is not a bad thing. It's better than throwing an interception, getting it returned to the 20-yard line. Yeah, I mean,
the best punter in the nation.
I mean, making a team drive the field on the Bison is so hard. You know, if you don't get the big play, good luck. You're not going to put together a 10 or 12 play drive against NDSU. You're not.
And
I mean, they haven't done it for 5 years.
That big play
no,
either.
and that's been the difference, I think, in the last 5 games compared to the first 6. You're not seeing as many explosive plays. Look at Northern Iowa. They had 7 explosive plays in the first game. Their longest play from scrimmage last week, 15 yards. Big difference.
I think 2 of their 3 seniors are their corners. And they're going to need those guys. And you know, if they know it's their last game in the Dome, they'll be ready to play. I remember the last game as a senior, so again, years ago, but still, they'll be ready to go, and they'll all be ready to go. But I think it'll really be good to see. I think our corners were challenged at Montana, and now to see where they've been, although CJ didn't play. I think they want to show, you know, we're okay. So.
Well, and Richmond certainly attacks. They will attack the corners. They've got 1 or 2 outstanding receivers, I know, and then of course they've got that run game. I mean, I feel like in some of these Bison games, last week they were playing Northern Iowa. They knew that the attack, the pressure point was going to be Northern Iowa, or to be Aaron Bailey in that situation. This week, Richmond has a couple more weapons, don't they?
I think they take more chances. They just throw the ball up to the receivers and let their receivers go make plays. And Illinois State lost every single 50-50 ball. Every single one down the field, and their coverage wasn't bad. And that's where I think CJ and Champ and Jalen Allison is going to have to play a lot of snaps. And those guys are going to have to try to turn the football over. They have thrown 13 interceptions. So their turnover ratio isn't as great as it should be based on how many they've taken away this year.
You said it. I mean, 13 interceptions, and they're just throwing it up there. 50-50 balls. They trust their athletes. But I think, you know, in the past 4 years, granted we had Marcus Williams, you know, possibly the best corner of all time at NDSU, but when we've played teams that do that and we see that on film, we prepare for it. They do it multiple times in every practice and just toss it up there, and they're going to be ready for that. And I think they're going to be ready to make the plays on Friday.
Well, we are going to get your guys' predictions coming up next, so I want to make sure that you guys all get thinking, start planning ahead. I'm not taking no for an answer. You got to come up with one. We've got plenty more with those predictions coming up from Herd and Horns with our Player Proceed Roundtable.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
All right, welcome back into the show. We're going to go out to the Dome where Beth Houle caught up with Bison head coach Chris Kleiman just minutes ago. Beth?
Thanks, guys. Joined by Coach Kleiman. Coach, a lot of distractions this week, but how do you guys look coming into this one?
Well, I think they've handled the distractions quite well. You know, I've had a busy week of finals and practice and meetings, and they're locked in. We had a good practice yesterday and an excellent walkthrough today, and so the guys are locked in, ready to go.
What's it going to take today to beat Richmond and advance to Frisco?
Well, we talked about we got to play a really clean game. We can't turn the football over. We can't have penalties. And we've got to be extremely disciplined. We're playing a really disciplined outfit that wants to do what we do, run the football, control the clock, win with defense and field position. And so it's going to come down to those factors. And so we need to be able to win the special teams battle, and we need to be able to make some plays.
Thanks so much, Coach. We appreciate it. Best of luck tonight, guys. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. And special teams coach brought up there a little bit, and we want to tell you some late breaking news tonight. Punter Ben Lecomte has come down with the flu. He's been sick. We'll just leave it at that. But he's been sick today and not feeling well, but he should be able to play tonight. He played such a big role in that win over Northern Iowa. Yeah, so Ben Lecomte should play, but just so you know, he's not at his best. All right, let's get the final thoughts on today's game from our guys on the Proceed Player Roundtable.
Hey guys, welcome out for our Proceed Player Roundtable here at Herd and Horns. Final segment, we're getting everybody's predictions on this one. We're going to just send it down the line. Dr. Debates, starting with you.
I'm a defensive guy. I'm going to go 34-6, the good guys.
I'm right along that line. I'm going to go Richmond 7, NDSU 35.
I'm thinking 38-14. I think maybe they'll get lucky, get a couple plays. I'll give them that. I'll give them 2 plays. But yeah, I'm thinking ultimately it's going to be a defensive sweep on that one.
I'm thinking 31-17, but the last touchdown is going to be the last drive, and the 2 is going to be in already. So,
Wow. Already calling the 2s coming out in the fourth quarter. I'm going to say 35-24. I do think Richmond is going to take a lot of chances, but I think at the end of the day, they're probably going to connect on at least a couple of them.
All right, guys. Well, sounds like a good one. I'm looking forward to watching any of the games you guys are talking about. That's for sure. I think you guys are right, though. I think this noise is really going to get to Richmond. I think we've seen what can happen to a team in their first time ever in the Fargo Dome, and we're looking forward to seeing it Friday night. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us once again at Herd and Horns. That's another Proceed Player Roundtable.
All right, we want to thank Beth and thank those guys as well as Brian Sean for joining us on the Proceed Player Roundtable there. High-scoring game, they're saying.
See, and I'm not seeing that. You look at the offense over the past 2 games. I think we put up 17, the offense, I should say. Right. 17 against Montana, roughly the same number against UNI. The offense, in all frankness, has kind of sputtered the past couple weeks. Thank goodness for Bruce taking it to the house on some special teams plays, obviously to put some more points on the board.
Yeah, there has been some struggles, but let's keep in mind, it's a redshirt freshman quarterbacking this Bison offense. Let's take a look at that quarterback comparison for these two, and we'll start with Kyle Laletta, the Richmond quarterback. Chris?
I mean, take a look at the passing yards, first off, and attempts. Clearly, they put the ball up in the air, and again, that's the one thing we talked about earlier. Can the Bison defense? Last week, they were able to stop Bailey and Smith, the running back for UNI, but now you've got a few different threats here. Jacoby Green, I mean, this guy's got, as Beth said earlier, video game type stats as far as on the ground, and Laletta's got a couple of good wideouts. So we're going to get spread out. The big question is, can the Bison D-line put some pressure on this guy? Because clearly, with 13 interceptions, he's willing to make some bad decisions.
Yeah, before we move on to Easton Stick, 13 interceptions in 13 games played. The Bison defenses has stepped up their game and forced turnovers a little bit more here as of late in the season. So 13 interceptions, I mean, that's a pretty glaring number, but he has made up for it with those 18 touchdowns. Now taking a look at Easton Stick. Again, no Carson Wentz this week. He is still out with the wrist injury, so no Carson Wentz. It is Easton Stick's team. It is Easton Stick's game. And while these aren't anything spectacular, the one I want to bring to your attention to is that 61% completion percentage. That I mean, he hasn't thrown the ball a ton, but when he has thrown it, he's been effective.
He has, and the one that really jumps out to me, you heard Coach Kleiman there just a moment ago with Beth Houle saying, look, we've got to play a clean game, no turnovers. For a redshirt freshman to step in, yes, they're not throwing a ball a ton, but to have an 11 touchdown to 2 touchdown to interception ratio, that is absolutely phenomenal. He understands the mental side of the game. He's not going to put your team in bad positions, and I think that if he sticks to this tonight, that will really make a big difference for the W for the Bison.
We didn't really get to see him use his feet so much in the first half against Northern Iowa. They kind of went to more of the quarterback run in the second half against Northern Iowa. I'm not sure that we won't see more of that quarterback run element added in early on for the Bison this week.
Will it make a difference? I mean, look at Roberson. Roberson's a stud.
Right.
He had 36 yards. Also, Koprich, I mean, leading rusher in the nation. That guy had 30 yards last week.
What we know is once Richmond gets up on you and you have to abandon your game plan, then the game is in their hands. So the Bison can't allow Richmond to get up early in this game and have to start throwing the football. If we have to throw the football, if the Bison have to throw the football, it's not going to be a very good game.
It definitely could be a different outcome. But, you know, I think they're going to see the Rams play very, very tough today. And, again, the key is can you put pressure on Loletta to make this guy make some bad decisions?
Let's talk about those keys. Here are my keys really quickly for the Bison, and it's really easy. Fast start. You need that fast start in this game. Don't let Richmond get up. Special teams need to be special. Could be a little bit difficult with the clock feeling. But, yeah, Bruce Anderson, 2 touchdown return, kick return touchdowns in the last 2 games, and you have to give the crowd a reason to be loud. Now, the crowd's going to be juiced, but you got to give them a reason to be loud.
Quickly, my keys to the game, very similar to yours. As a matter of fact, got the old hashtag Bison Nation, be heard, 12th man. Honestly, I think this is going to be such a huge component of this game. So Bison Nation, get it going tonight, which we know you will. Special teams, we talked about LeCompte there, not feeling great, but if he can continue to flip the field, it's tough for any team to drive the field, as Brian Shawn talked about in the Proceed Player Roundtables. And I think Easton Stick, again, no turnovers, needs to play a very smart football game.
It's Easton Stick's game, and so we just need to see what he can do. I mean, he's had a great playoff so far, and it's hard to forget, or easy to forget, that he is just a redshirt freshman playing in his first playoff games and now in his first national semifinal. Well, last year the Bison had a quarterback playing in his first national semifinal, and it seemed to work out okay for them.
You got a prediction?
No, I do not.
Really?
I'm not putting one out there.
I'm going 27-14 Bison. I think they win by 2 touchdowns, obviously, and or more. We'll see how this thing plays out. Again, kickoff at 7:09 on ESPN 2. Deuce.
ESPN 2. We want to thank you for watching the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. If we win, we'll see you here in a couple weeks. If not, well, we'll see you here in a couple weeks.